We good to go. We good to go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Y'all know what it is. We're back. Men the Mind, episode 6. We got our guy Caleb with us today. Shout out to FSU as always for bringing this connection together for sure. Via Nick. I mean, he's the common denominator here, right? Nick is the man, the myth, the legend, out here making connections, bringing people together. The great Nick Davis. But Caleb, we appreciate you hopping on with us. And y'all, as always, like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. If there's anything that y'all find interesting that you want to talk about, you want us to talk about, please send it in. You know, we're here for y'all. We're here to just spread knowledge, health, and wealth, and give our opinions on some of these things. So, without further ado, I think that's how you properly say it. Without further ado, Mr. Caleb, I'm gonna turn it over to you real quick. Give the people a quick intro, and again, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely, Mike and Nick. Thank you for having me on the show, fellas. Pleasure to be here. But yeah, my name's Caleb, and Nicky D's a common denominator here. Went to grad school down at FSU 2 years. Applied sports psychology. But definitely a strong in the sports background. Played rugby in undergrad at Coastal Carolina. But now work with a consulting and coaching company out of Chicago. But just all about that, like Mike said, health and wealth, living life every day to the fullest, taking care of the temple, and getting the best out that we can each and every day.
And if y'all can't tell already, if y'all can just kind of peep the stature of Caleb here, look at those broad shoulders, all right? Look at that chest. Hey, ladies, this guy is a man, all right? Y'all go get y'all some of Caleb, all right? Listen, we ran a half marathon in Indy. I kid y'all not, we ran a half marathon in Indy, and I was pacing Caleb part of this, and I low-key, I was looking around because we were running by, and shorties who are cheering people on, they just staring this man down,
Stop playing.
I was like, what is going on? But listen, I swear, you didn't peep it. But I'm looking around, I'm like, yo, they want some of him. They're gonna come find this man after the race, all right? Tell him how great he ran. So, ladies, if y'all are single, I'll at my guy Caleb, all right?
I appreciate the plug. But I had the blinders on. The blinders were on. Nothing was going on outside. Blinders on.
Y'all hear that? And he's a focused fan, all right? Y'all get him. Look, even the blinders are on. He's here. It's just about you. There's a task at hand, and he's coming for you. Right?
That's what I'm saying.
So
blinders, a good point to kind of jump in with running lately for Caleb. And one of the things that we'll get to is like this idea of discipline. But Caleb, you haven't always been a runner.
No.
That's a newer
that
thing
is
for you,
a newfound hobby. Yes, if you would have told my 18-year-old high school senior offensive defensive lineman 250 pounds self that I'd be running in years, I'd be like, you're crazy. Get out of here. I'm not even running a mile. You think I would be running distances? No way. But yeah, just a newfound hobby, a passion that after undergrad, definitely the rugby. I mean, that's obviously more conditioning, kind of more along the lines of soccer, that nonstop pace up and down. But after that, I was like, I got to do something that's gonna keep the systems firing, something to find that competitive edge in running. Just fell in love with.
Yeah, and it's not even like a couple days a week anymore for you. You're after it most days, if not all days. I think you might have the longest run out of the three of us. You did do an ultra, if I'm not mistaken.
It was 27 to celebrate the birthday. That was nothing. Just a little happy track on a Sunday. 27 miles to celebrate 27 years, baby. Come on, a little self-love.
That's tough. Round of applause to that. 27 for 27. Yo.
Got to celebrate accordingly.
Hey, as a matter of fact, I say you just kind of keep this going and holla at ESPN. You know, free promo right now until we get there. We got to get a 30 for 30 on this guy, all right? Come on
30
now.
years old. Stack 100 up. let me get that.
Wow, there's an idea.
There is
an idea. So I mentioned kind of like foreshadowed a little bit of discipline there, especially with the running, but I guess workouts for you in general. For those who didn't have the experience of Caleb living with them as a roommate, this kid, I mean, he maybe falls asleep during the
Hey, no,
9 p.m. football games more often
somehow.
than not, but he he's up early. I mean, what, 4 something, 5 something, at the gym every day. You don't miss days.
Few and far between.
You were very disciplined in how you go about that. Yeah.
There's some days. I'm not gonna
What
lie. There's
role?
some days where we're out and about with extracurriculars, but hey, most days we're dialed in, more often than not.
So first off, how would you define discipline? And then second, what role has it played for you, whether it's fitness or just in life?
I think discipline. I think the only form of discipline is self-discipline. I don't think another individual can discipline you or give you discipline, so to speak. I think that has to come from inside of you. But discipline to me is just the commitment to the daily standard, or commitment to kind of that small unit of work that often is tedious, that often is not fun, that often is not rewarding in the moment. There's no immediate gratification. There's no big reward while you're doing it, but just stacking those building blocks on building blocks day after day. I kind of think it's just that adherence to the small unit of work, so to speak.
I have a question on that. So, all of us being former athletes, would you consider it discipline when coach says, "Hey, practice is at 6:30 a.m. or 3:30 p.m." and you have to show up for that? Is that discipline? I mean, you said nobody else can discipline you, or I kind of give you that discipline. How do you look at that?
I would say that is not discipline, because that is a mandatory requirement for whatever organization or group or something that you're a part of. And somebody else has made that distinction, or that time, or that whatever. Somebody else has placed that upon you that you now have to follow because you're hence a part of that group. So I would not consider that discipline.
For sure. For sure.
Nick D, what were you thinking there?
Yeah. So second one was, so what role has that played for you, to kind of build off that?
I mean, I think it's, like I said before, it's just an everyday thing that as the months have gone on is when you see really the reward in your life, and especially with running. I'm going to relate this to running because obviously I was never a runner through high school or college. And to start off, let's put it plain and simple, running sucks. I mean, if you haven't ran before and you're just going to hop out and you think, oh yeah, I'm going to go run 5 miles today. Yeah. Are you? Good luck. Like, good luck with it if you haven't just been doing that constantly. And so I think with running, it humbles you in the beginning. There is no doubt about it. You have never been running, you're going to be humbled in the beginning. And it's that, again, discipline to just keep chipping away, that where in the time it's like, damn, man, I'm not seeing any progress. Like, this is the same as it was a couple of days ago. This is the same as it was last week. But then you get a month out, 2 months out, 3 months out, a year out, and you're putting up times, or your heart rate's at numbers that you didn't even think were possible 6 months ago. I think the discipline, how have I built that in my life, is just seeing that by that small unit of work that, like, on this day, it doesn't really seem like it's going to amount to a whole lot, or even on that course of a week, it doesn't really amount to a lot. But then you go a year down the road and look back, wow, that was a small little increment that got me to here. And that's crazy.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing to that with me is, like, the most prevalent experience for me where that was like a discipline that was accurate is like the example that Mike had, with like just practice, like being something that you have to show up at. But to your point about it, like being a self piece, I'm internalizing what the coach is saying, right? You know, like, it's still me. I'm still the engine driving it. There just might be like influences from the outside. so that's where my head goes based on what we already covered. For you, where does the self-discipline come from? Like, what's the bigger picture, the driving force for that?
I think everyone, it has to be with goals. Obviously, you have to have, and this can relate to self-determination theory, but we have to have something that far off into the future that we are working towards, that is a part of who we are, that we relate with, that we choose whatever it is that we want to achieve, not somebody else telling us what it is we have to achieve. It's something that we want, that it's something that relates to our self identity, so to speak. And so, but I think there has to be something that you are working towards. There has to be some type of, and this goes in all, this could be in your business, this could be with a relationship, this is with all of those areas. There has to be some type of goal or something greater into the future that you are working towards. Because if you are just in those small minutia, those day-to-day tasks that can get very easily lost, and you're like, well, why am I doing this? So what am I keep waking? What's the alarm going off at 5 a.m. for every day if there's nothing out on the books, so to speak? Like what's the purpose here if there's nothing to eventually work toward?
Yeah. You sparked another like memory, and this is so we all know who I'll mention. I'm just gonna say Jay, but a friend of Mike, Nat, and I's for sure. I believe you met her at some point down in Tallahassee too. But there was one conversation that we had where she just didn't want to go to the gym, and I was like, look, Jay, you didn't exactly sign up for it to be easy every day. You have an end goal that you want to get to, right? And that's what you want to achieve. How to sitting it out today work into that? Like, is it worth sitting it out for whatever you don't want to do today? And I think that's an interesting angle of this. Is like, it's probably not too much pushback. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the comments are just gonna be filled with hate for what we said already. But there's probably not too much pushback on the idea that discipline is good and we should have it. Why don't we then, right? So like, it poses the question to you and to Mike: what holds us back from maintaining that discipline?
I'll jump in real quick. So I think Caleb's kind of already hit it on the head, in so many words, saying that people are too nearsighted. They're now you can have. I heard something like you can do anything for a day, a week, or even a month for that matter. But when it comes to 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year or more, that nearsightedness and that inability to conquer the giant of being nearsighted is tough for most people. It's difficult to say, hey, this is what I want to do 6 months from now. I'm gonna come up with a plan. I'm gonna stick to it, and I'm gonna execute it. But I think that also is a very big difference, like Caleb said, between running and a lot of other sports for that matter. Like a lot of other sports, you got games weekly, sometimes twice in a week. So you have something very, very near that you're working towards. But when it comes to running, you're not competing every weekend for the most part. Those summer months of training, 3-4 months where you don't have a race in sight and you're just prepping for that opening race. Florida State, we love going to Boone. We go to App State, the Cover Bridge Invite, the Cover Bridge Open. We train 4 months over the summer to go do a time trial in Boone, North Carolina. A lot of people can't handle that. A lot of people, and when you start applying it to whether it be work, whether it be business, whether it be relationships, I'll speak to work in particular. All right, what is my 5-year plan for this job? Do I see myself staying here for 5, 10 years? Or am I going to use this as a building block to get to where I want to go for that next 6 to 10 years? A lot of people, they get in that routine of, I'm just up, I'm just here, I just do my job. All right, I kind of interact with people, I go home. And you see that for so long. So I think people get caught in that cycle. So I just kind of want to bring it back to a lot of people just are maybe afraid or they don't see the point in conquering the inability to overcome nearsightedness and plan for long-term objectives and goals.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely with that, Mike. And I think one thing that I was going to say with that is in today's society, almost in every facet, we want everything instant. Our world now is instant.
Facts.
Social media is
Facts.
instant. We got our phone. We get everything instant here, and it's just more and more and more. We've never had so much information just bombarding us. Never able to pull up information, just have easiest access to everything at our fingertips. And the concept of having to put in work over an extended period of time, not necessarily see results or not necessarily have an outcome that's going to happen in that 90 days. But like I think that's kind of scary. That's daunting. Or like you would question, well, why do I want to do that? If I want something now. I need gratification now. Want this to happen. I want to lose 10 pounds tomorrow. Why is this not happening now? I think we kind of how to find some way to reset that and be like, no, this is delayed gratification. We're working for something greater than ourselves, something bigger, not just immediate now.
Hey, let me hit on that real quick, Nick, before you jump in. Because Caleb, you talked about, and it's something as simple as working out, wanting to lose 10 pounds. Like I haven't been on social media in a pretty long time. Like I have my
Good for you.
accounts, but I haven't been on like Twitter and Instagram.
Good for you, Mike. Good
Yeah,
for
man.
you.
I recognized that it was taking time away from other things that I could be doing. And also I was at a point where I was graduating college, I was finishing up the collegiate portion of my running career, and I was transitioning into the workforce, and I was comparing everything else that everyone else was doing to where I was. And I recognized, like, I was like, man, this is killing me. I was like, I got to stop this. Like, I have to stop this. I have to cut myself off from that. But that wasn't the point. But you talked about losing 10 pounds immediately. I want to give a shout out to all the people. When I get like people send me TikTok videos and stuff of people working out, all the people that are grinding in the gym, and they do the stitches where this is me over 30 days, over 60 days, over 90 days. And it's a complete transformation. Yeah. Like that stuff is so raw and so cool. Like that is the discipline and dedication that I think you hit on that a lot of people lack. Like it could be something as simple as 5 to 10 pounds. It's not going to happen overnight, but like 30 to 60 days, y'all can commit to that. Y'all can commit 30 to 60 days and see a huge transformation that will hopefully start a snowball effect in the rest of your life. Like I love seeing those videos. Like really shout out to y'all. Y'all are doing y'all thing with those.
Absolutely.
You actually, I mean, you may have jumped in, but you said two of the exact things that I was going to say, Mike. So that worked out nicely. The first one was like the idea of kind of just comparisons in general. I know Caleb, you touched on this, Mike, you touched on it again. Comparisons really do the opposite of that, like nearsighted, farsightedness, right? Like if you want the focus beyond appreciating like now or like, you know, accepting and being in now, looking at comparisons and like seeing all these outcomes and having that be your focus is so tough. I know, Mike, we've touched a lot on kind of this idea of you can care about the outcome. Like the outcome is something you want. That's why you're going towards it. That's why it's your end goal. Right. But if you're not going to enjoy the process along the way and you just want the outcome, man, those days are going to be miserable, right?
Long day.
Yeah. And it actually sparked when Caleb was talking. You guys both mentioned like this is applicable everywhere, not just like workplace. I'm going to throw relationships in there as well. Just got back from a wedding yesterday in good old Knoxville. Congratulations to Zach and Jesse for that. Phenomenal wedding. But like I can't help but sit there like at the wedding and you start to think about like the wedding is kind of an outcome too. And the most beautiful relationships, like it's not centered about the wedding, right? And some of the more toxic ones, maybe it is centered around the wedding and getting to that, right? And one thing that was prevalent yesterday was that was not what theirs was about, right? It was about enjoying each other and the time that they have and that they have had, continue to have. And so kind of putting that into the relationships factor is big. I think even more generally with people, Caleb, we've talked about how pure like the mindset is when you're younger. Like, you don't have to tell a kid to go play or to go enjoy the day, right?
Yeah.
Like they just do it. And we could learn so much from it. Kids like the little things, right? Like they enjoy each and every day and each part of every day. Like it's fun, it's an adventure. And at some point we get away from that, which is not as productive for a really positive mental space. You start getting into more of that comparison. And that brought me to one of your taglines, Caleb, that I was hoping you might be able to expand on. If you want to connect back to anything, you can. But this idea of no place I'd rather be.
Mm-hmm. That is how.
What do you mean when you say that?
So that is, yeah. And the company I work with, the Zone Coaches, all that is how we define happiness. Because happiness is a mindset. Happiness is a choice. The greatest gift that each one of us have every day is free will, and how we exercise that free will determines how we feel that day. And don't get me wrong, life happens. People are in terrible situations. There are horrible things happening. But at the end of the day, we get to choose how we respond to everything that's happening. And we can choose to respond with whatever happens with a smile on our face, with our chin up, and to learn something if a negative happens, to take some type of improvement experience. Because all those negatives are simply just rungs on the ladder that we're climbing to whatever goal or whatever vision we want to achieve. But yeah, being in the moment is how we define happiness. That there's nowhere else I'd rather be than right here, right now, doing what I'm doing, talking to you fellas, or I should get up and leave. If I'm not happy here and not loving right here, right now in this moment, fully immersed, thinking about what we're talking about, and then we should all get up and leave. But that's what, like, being in those those small units of work and just immersing yourself in that, not going into the future, not saying, but just right here, right now, doing what we're doing.
I'm gonna follow up. I'm gonna follow up on that, and I'm asking a personal question here for myself because recently and I was telling Nick about this. I was in the process for another job. I've been with my current company for just started my third year, and at this point, and I recognize it already. That it's not necessarily the work that I see myself doing long term. I got to the point where I was just like, man, like this is not it's not fulfilling me. Like I don't feel like I'm growing a ton. I'm helping people, and that's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy helping people, connecting people, growing them. Um, and so I've been getting to the point where I feel like I am a high functioning zombie, and I can wake up in the morning when that alarm clock goes off. I just like my brain just snaps to it. It goes in default mode. Like, all right, we're in survival mode. We're here. We're gonna be present per se, but it's not my most fully present self. And I've been trying to work through that. So, do y'all have any like advice, tips, and tricks that I can use? And I've been trying to live my truth and be like, man, like this is just not fulfilling for me. So I need help to get through this right now.
So I think Caleb touched on a couple of routes that you can go. One would be like the idea of free will, right? And it being like you get to choose, right? Like happiness being a mindset and things like that. That ties in with some of the other things of, enjoying that moment and like living in that moment. What a lot of people struggle with in my mind has to do with that idea of perception with free will. Like it doesn't even truthfully matter if you have free will or not. And what most people get caught up on is the idea of if you actually have it or not. Like, can I boil down everything on Earth to biological and chemical reactions and therefore predict everything that's going to happen? Like, that's like a hardcore behaviorist argument.
Probably.
Yeah, you probably could if you had access to the data. Like, sure, go for it. But what matters more is that you control the perception that you have, because what you perceive is your reality. I can't prove that anything outside of my own thoughts exist either. That's a hardcore philosophical argument that might counter that, right? And so kind of recognizing that and then pushing yourself to see as many avenues as you can gives you the most choices as possible, right? If you push yourself to take other perspectives and see the good and the bad in as many things as possible, you can then choose to see the best, right? Like if you look at, you have a job you don't like, right? Like not you, but just in general, like somebody has a job they don't like. You can look at it as a job you don't like and it's miserable, and you can complain about how bad it is and how much you hate your coworkers and how your boss is a dick and like, yada, yada, yada. You can also choose to look at it as a growth opportunity and look at the experience that you're gaining and all of these other things that, sure, it's a mundane task. Maybe we're a high functioning zombie. But are you going to view a high functioning zombie in terms of, bad habits that are being forced onto you that you have no control over? Or are you going to view it as ways for you to implement and fine tune skills so that when you get somewhere else, you could be a high functioning zombie that likes showing up to work, right? It's two sides of the same coin, and it's entirely in your power which you want to do.
Right. That's facts.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's similar to, like I said, it's because negatives happen every day to all of us. We run a gauntlet of negativity. Life happens. But it's up to us to how we choose if we want to respond and how we want to react. Because we're always, regardless of how bad we think it is in that current moment, there's still something to learn, something to improve on, or something, like Nikki D said, a skill to take with you to the next level. There's always something each and every day that you can learn or apply. And all right, understand this. This didn't work today, so now tomorrow let's attack this, but let's look at it from a different angle and see if that. I think each and every day, regardless of the situation we find ourselves in, we can still always take at least one thing, like one positive, one thing that we learned. Hey, now we know we're not going to do this tomorrow, and today's going to be better than that. So, I think also, Mike, with
No,
go ahead.
Go
I
ahead.
would say
Go
one
ahead,
other
Caleb.
part is that I think individual definitely happens that we want to place all of our happy eggs in one basket. Like, so with our self identity, we just go through different stages of life and we put all of our happy, like, well, for work, for example, like I have this job and the entire day consumes all of your thoughts are just around that job. And you forget about your friend that you have or girlfriend or your family or all these other different life areas that are thriving and have great relationships or whatever. And we're so consumed on the negative that we just boil ourselves down to kind of one small speck of us, so to speak, and aren't taking in the big picture and everything that is going on and all the great things that are happening.
I think that's a really good point. I think that's a really good point, I should say. And maybe we've already hit on it. Like some of that is the nearsightedness of, hey, I'm here today. Like, what can I take away from this long term? And I think that, and I could be biased thinking about myself. Like, I think I try to approach it that way. And I go, all right, what can I learn right now that's going to help me in my next role with whatever I decide to do next? And then Nick, you hit on a point of talking about a positive attitude. That is one thing that I'm going to bring every single day. Like you could probably ask any of my coworkers, my boss, colleagues, nobody would probably ever know that I'm not fulfilled. When I go in there, I bring a positive attitude. I got a lot of energy because I don't want to become cancerous to the team. That is not my role, and that is not what I'm here to do. Because I don't want to steal somebody else's happiness and the joy that they may be having. Literally, and you, Caleb, you talked about it. Things outside of work can bring happiness. On the inverse, there may be everything outside of work for them that brings them sadness or that irritates them. So when they come to work, they're looking for that positive environment. So again, like having that positive attitude, bring it every day. Like that is the one thing I know I can bring. Y'all talk about controlling what you can control. I can control my attitude. I might not be able to control everything in this environment, but the attitude I bring, the way I interact with people, the way I talk to you, the way I support you, you're going to get the best version of me almost every single day. And I encourage everybody else to do the same thing for sure.
Yeah. I think like we touched on it some with Trey too. And I think Caleb probably has a really unique perspective on this. Be interesting. One day we'll get everybody in the same room.
Trey
reunion, but
bids are up today. Trey's gonna be riding high. Bids are up.
Dude, he had a comment today that said, I can't imagine rooting for anyone other than the Finns. I don't know why you guys even wait till Sunday because we already won the Super Bowl. That is a comment from Trey today. So keep that in your back pocket if things go south. That was, he gets very excited very quickly. I think he also, this week, he also said that Miami was going to roll Florida State and was the best team in the ACC after Florida State beat Clemson. I was like, hey man, if nothing else, he's got confidence. He has confidence.
And some people live in a state of delusion. Like, we all choose the delusions that we live in. That is clearly his. All right, I just want to put that out there. All right, that is his delusion that he lives in.
But some of the things that we talked about with Trey were this idea of like the different yous, right? Whether it's home you, it's parent you, it's work you, it's friend you, it's athlete you.
Let me throw one more in there. Let me throw one more in there. Whether it's F the U, all right? Forget them. We don't want nothing to do with them, all right? Just had to throw that in there. My bad, Nick. Go ahead, keep rolling.
That's okay. That's a critical piece that I missed, so that was big. I got the Florida State on underneath the
yes,
the White Sox. But one of the things that we touched on were all the different U's and like carrying your best characteristics across those different U's. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be the same exact person in everyone, right? There's different demands on you in each environment, but that does mean that you don't have to leave your strengths over there if they could help you over here. So try to integrate it in a positive way as much as you can. And one thing that I think, particularly when things get tough, that people fail to do is, bring in that ability to see other perspectives again. And so, Mike, kind of building off of some of what you were saying, one of my favorite TED Talks ever. Let me double check his name. I believe it's Mark Rover or something like that. I got it right here. Yeah, Mark Rover. He's a big YouTube guy, a bunch of like cool like science things. Like imagine if you had an unlimited budget and a really crazy amount of scientific knowledge where you could just build engineering projects, but you were like 7 years old. That's pretty much what his channel is. It's pretty sick. I don't actually watch the channel much, but I've seen him talk. And so things like the world's biggest Nerf gun or the world's biggest like water gun. He made a hot tub that was all sand and the sand like levitates. Just like random things like this, or a dartboard that you throw a dart and the board moves in the time that it takes for the dart to get to the board. Bullseye every time.
What?
Yeah. And then he would do it the other way. So if he's playing somebody, he'll switch it to like, you won't even hit the board. The board will move out of the way regardless of how fast you throw the dart. That one I believe he did on Jimmy Kimmel, which is funny. But his TED Talk was on this idea of like the Super Mario effect. More or less, the idea is when you are a kid and you're playing games, right? When he was a kid, Super Mario came out. And so the goal is to go save Princess Peach, right? You're not focused the next day when you're talking to your friends about the game on how many times you died, which hole you fell in, how many like turtle shells you slipped on. The focus is on like how fun it was and what you got to, right? And those achievements. And one of the things that drives those achievements is the holes you fall on or fall into and the shells that hit you and all of this, right? So this idea of using mistakes as fuel to success. He read an interesting study with this, which was more or less they had a game for learning computer code. Okay. Very like elementary thing. It was like puzzles and things like that. Just that he had his YouTube subscribers run through. There were 50,000 participants. And half of them were in a group where, your budget or your points, which don't mean anything, wasn't affected when you made a mistake. The other half lost 5 meaningless points every time they made a mistake. The result was like 68 to 52% completion for those who didn't get punished for mistakes. So we're talking like you're almost at 70% versus 50%. You also saw that the 50% group that was punished for mistakes on average tried like 5 times. That was their attempts. The group at 70%, well, why are they so far ahead? They're not worried about mistakes. They tried on average 12 times per attempt. And so being able to like try new things and see how it works and use that as learning. Like even if you're just sending emails and things through your day-to-day job, like just meaningless, monotonous tasks, are you willing to try new things and make mistakes that might grow you as an individual? Are you willing to continue to push boundaries? And how do you view mistakes, right? Because the more evaluation you have, the less enjoyable tasks tend to be. And so if you're more worried about that than actually trying, getting engulfed in the process and, being disciplined and working, you're probably not going to see as much success, which is kind of what that study showed. And then the last thing, and I'll turn it back to you guys, but there was a graph that he uses on that. And it was very similar to Caleb's ladder analogy. So let's see if it'll load. Kind of.
A little visual.
So the top one is like your plan, just a straight shot. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, it got there.
So your plan, like in your head, is usually just like a straight line, like you're on a bike and
Yeah,
you get to the finish line.
Straight shot. There's no challenge. It's right to it.
Yeah. But in reality, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to fall into a pit of like rocks or spikes, or you're going to have to cross a river. Like these things are going to happen. It's just part of life. And so when that thing or those things happen, are you pushing yourself to, learn from the pit of rocks that you fell in, or are you giving up because you fell in the pit of rocks? Right. And so in everyday tasks, like how can you apply that? Like how can you get excited to make mistakes? Because that's where our successes kind of come from.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah, 'cause the fear of failure oftentimes will hold somebody back because if they fail, then they think and that's over. But that is not at all. That's just like I said. Yeah, my knowledge is just a rung on the ladder. We're continuing to climb day after day. It's a learning experience. It's a time that we're going to take away. All right, this is not something that worked in the past. So this is not a good characteristic of myself this is something I need to improve on. Just simply learn from that, be able to keep moving the needle each and every day.
Yeah, I think even like tying it back to the perception too, right? Like you can make mistakes and not view them as mistakes, right? Like mistakes has a negative connotation, which is kind of what that gets at. Even like on a more simple level, dude, I'm not fun to work out with. One, because I don't have that crazy discipline to get into the gym and do it and just like grind. But more so, when I work out, dude, I think everything's funny. Like it's like when you're getting chewed out by a coach on a team and the one kid's just like laughing and having a good time in the back. Like that's me. Yeah. And everybody's like, yo, fuck. But tie that back to perception. Like I'm here to have a good time, dude. If I'm not having a good time, this idea of there's no place I'd rather be. Okay. Like why am I here if I'm not having a good time? Like, yeah, running blows, but I'm enjoying being on the run. If I wasn't enjoying being on the run, like Caleb said, I would have got up, stopped running first of all, and walked it back to the crib.
I need to hit some lights here. We get dark.
Take your time. But like that idea, like at work, right? They talk about giving yourself more options and choosing to view it positively. Yeah, dude, I'm sending emails, but no place I'd rather be. Like I'm sending emails instead of like holding a sign and saying like, "Can you spare a quarter?"
That is facts. I think one thing that you mentioned on earlier that.
Well, I think we
go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead.
I'll just say one thing that I think too that ties into the discipline. So everyone, just going back to the discipline point, everyone, like if there's fitness influencers, people always ask like, I wish I had their motivation, or how do I get motivated to go to the gym, or can you motivate me to go to the gym? And it's always from external comparison. Like they see this individual and they're working that, and they think that they need to do exactly what they're doing. They need to work out as much as them. But it's never about you comparing yourself to somebody else. It's always just about you moving the needle for your own self just a little bit better than what you were yesterday. Because you can't compare to what that individual's been doing for. They've been in the game 20 years and haven't missed a day. So you think you can't compare like, well, I need the motivation that he has. No, it doesn't work like you're just beating yourself from yesterday. That's all that you're worried about. You're not worried about what he's doing or what she's doing. So I think that falls in that discipline too, because with that motivation, that's just going to be external, and that's not going to be lasting.
Yep.
To that point, and it might sound or seem far fetched to some people, but I think we've all seen it where we look at somebody like, dang, how did they get
For
to that
sure.
point? To get to that point, they had to have a day one. Like they had to start somewhere. And so the far fetched part of this is if you find yourself in that state of comparison, reach out, like ask them, hey, what did your day one look like? Like you're 20 years in. What was day one like for you? What was the first week like for you? Like, I want to be there, but I only see the 20-year product of the work that you've done. Like, I would love to get in contact with you. It may not happen, but reach out. It might happen, but then also remember, there has to be a day one. There has to be a day one. And when you have that day one, track it and then go back and track day 15 and track day 30 and track day 45 and 60 and 90 and so on and so forth. And look at the progress that you have. Because at some point, somebody's going to be looking at you like, wow, look at that product of 5 years of work. I wonder what their day one was like. I wonder if they have a recollection of where they started and if they can help me get started. Like, that's the biggest thing. It's just like, get started, get going, start somewhere, regardless of where it is, just start.
Absolutely.
Yep. I think also, you're probably, wherever you're starting, there is probably somebody that looks at you and thinks like, dang,
absolutely.
I wish I was at that level.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the craziest thing is most people are their own biggest hater, right? Like, what is the ratio of thoughts in your head that you are beating yourself up versus you're complimenting yourself? Yeah. Throw a tally in there. Try to measure that over a course of a day. I bet you'll be astounded at how rude
that's
you
fact.
are.
That's something we said. Yeah.
And you're stuck with you.
That's what we say to all of our clients. If I talk to you the way that you talk to yourself, you'd fire me. So why are you talking? So why are you talking to yourself like that? I'm not there all the time with you, so you got to have that internal regulation. You can't talk to yourself like that and expecting results. And if I talk like that, you're fired. So
right, yeah.
And the other thing with that is like over time, what does that look like on a day basis? Yeah, it's not great. What does it look like over a couple of years when you're just beating yourself up year after year after year? Dude, it's not good. It's not good. I was talking the other day after the wedding. We were kind of having a discussion about like some work stuff, and with soldiers, especially with like special operations, selection rates are really low. So like there's a lot of people who want to be like the Navy SEALs or the Green Beret. You know, they just want to be the best of the best. They see these movies and they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like that's what I want to do. That's me. That speaks to me, right? And you know, that's enough to get them started. So we can always address that later when we talk about getting started. But a lot of people have a goal and maybe they start along that path. And along that path, it doesn't go as well. You know, like you get to a couple weeks into selection and they've got you standing in the middle of freezing cold water up to your waist in North Carolina. You've already been like just going through it for a couple of weeks. What's your motivation look like? What keeps you going? And to Caleb's point, like the external, the internal, you're going to have both. Realistically, we all have both. You're not isolating one or the other. But we run courses that get guys ready for these things. And you can tell who is more likely to be successful off of the ratio of that internal to external, right? The guys who just wanted a pay bump, get out of the river. That's not enough to the guys who identify and say, like, I am that, you know, elite soldier and I am, you know, if I am them and they do this, then I do this, right? Like that is me. I'm a grinder. I'm going to do it, right? Like I'm going to get up and go to the gym. I identify as that as a person instead of I want to be that person. Those are very, very different things.
Yes.
For sure.
I think that self-talk is huge too with programming. Like, is oftentimes like it's somebody. Even this with weight loss, even so. When individuals thinking, "Oh, I want to lose 20 pounds," or they're seeing themselves often in negative light. They're seeing an overweight person. They're seeing an unhappy person. They're seeing someone that they want to shed this from. When in reality, they should be seeing themselves as 20 pounds lighter and they're fit and they're healthy and I am healthy. I am 20 pounds lighter. I am in shape. I am this, that, not I will be in shape, because these are all negative. So when you think about when you're talking to yourself and your subconscious is thinking about, well, losing 20 pounds, that's a negative. So right now you're thinking of yourself in a negative way. You continue and just rehearse that over and over. That cycle is not necessarily as positive as what we think.
Yeah. I think another interesting point with that too is, so we've hinted at this a couple of times. I'm going to lay it out like real quick. Just the idea of like motivations. So let's see if I can get my hand right. So we've got like intrinsic would be over here. This would be the good side, and then extrinsic would be the bad side, right? The idea that extrinsic, those things that are coming from outside of you, think money, rewards, punishment, like, you're ringing the bell for the food for the dog, and they salivate when they see food, right? Like that's all over here. That's why the dog wants the food, or why the bell makes him salivate, whatever the study actually said. I'm playing on details, not important.
You go look up Pavlov.
We know
I want to learn more. Yeah.
Just didn't write it down. Yeah. Love some Pavlov. As we move towards intrinsic, there are stages. It's not just like a black and white thing. The next would be this idea of shame and guilt, right? So I don't want to let the team down. I don't want to let my family down, or pride, ego involvement. Like if you're doing things purely for pride and you want to prove that you're better than other people, I don't think I have to tell you that's a little toxic. Like there's probably other reasons you can be doing things. It's still better than rewards and punishment. Don't get me wrong there, but you can still be better. The next one would be kind of identifying the value. So when we talk about, or I guess I've talked about a lot, the viewing different sides of things and choosing the best one. I could value chemistry without liking or identifying with chemistry if I want to be a doctor, right? Like there's a clear path that I see chemistry is going to help me get a pre-med, major accomplished and move on with being a doctor. And so I value that in and of itself, and that value is coming from me, right? Then you'd have identifying with it. So this idea of, well, I am a doctor and doctors are good at chemistry. That's a little bit stronger. And then finally enjoying things and doing them for their fun and the sake of the thing itself. Right. So the last three would be more of that internal or intrinsic. And then the first two, or having no motivation at all, which we've touched on a little bit, is also the ultimate form of external or extrinsic motivation. Where that gets interesting is it overlaps very, very well with goals and aspirations. So not only like what is causing you to do what you're doing in the moment, but your long-term goals. If your long-term goals are money, fame, fortune, or in the case of the gym, to look good. And like I had one kid, freshman, love this kid. Joke, but first thing I ever talked to, I was like, so what like made you want to run for the college team? He's from my hometown rival high school. First time meeting him, we're on a summer run, just me and him. He's like, honestly, dude, I just run so that I could be fuckable. I was like, great.
We're off to a hot start.
That's not sustainable. He did wind up not finishing his college career. Neither did I. But I also ran a lot of that shame, guilt, like ego involvement. I was done. It's not sustainable over time. And so a lot of people, when there's weight loss or when there's going to the gym, the fun fact of guys always wanting to be like 25 pounds heavier. Anthony from Florida State, super guilty of this. Kid put on 25 pounds. He wants to put on another 25 pounds. He's like, I think I'd be even better at this weight. And it's that's fine. But at what point is it looks or health that's driving us? Because if you're looking for more money or, more external like factors, once you get to your current check mark, you're just going to have a new one. You're not going to pat yourself on the back. It's just you're always going to be this far away. Versus if you want, if you just want to be healthy, you can see the benefits in being healthy and like your achievement along the way. I feel healthier. My yearly, I give up drinking for a month. Dude, my mind is so clear. I feel great. Very crisp. Caleb, you do like cleanses, right? Like where you go on a little like fast
before. Yeah.
Fairly regular. Yeah. And how are you after that?
Like a top, fire on all cylinders. We are dialed in. Yes.
No. How does that sit with you, Mike? I guess any of that.
So fasting. That was the first thing I thought about. I've done a 13 or 14-day fast before. I've done a 3-day only water fast. My 13 or 14 was fruits and vegetables, only water, and then I've done a couple like 24-hour fast as well. But like thinking about that, I guess going back like the intrinsic versus extrinsic, I don't think I want to call either of the motivations bad. And I think we may have hinted at that a little bit earlier. While I think one is more sustainable than the other, I can't say that either of them is bad. Like if there's something external that gets you going, then so be it. Like that's phenomenal.
Yep.
But at some point, right, use it. At some point, there has to be a switch that flips and it becomes intrinsic motivation and you start to fall in love with that process. So it's cool to have extrinsic motivations, people who motivate you, things you see a certain body type you want to have, a certain amount of money you want to get, status, whatever it is. But at some point, you have to be willing to fill your own cup up and to pour into yourself and keep those intrinsic motivations going. Because if you don't, at some point, when you reach whatever it is you want to reach, more than likely you're not going to be fulfilled. You're going to be like, oh, I'm here. Now what? Like I did this for the attention. I got the attention. Now what? So just for a little bit of clarity, I want to make sure that that's very, very clear as we continue to talk about this topic.
Yeah, I think that's massive. I think even like if you go back to like the in waist deep water in the river, look, if if getting you through that waist deep water in the river is the thought of doing this for your family and the security there, like in that shame or guilt that drives that gets you to the river, that can still be very effective, right? Like that is a very powerful motivator still. Like you said, it's just over time you can't do that. That can't be the main one, you know?
Right. Huh. So while we it looks like we got a little break here real quick. So I want to make sure we don't forget about our wonderful producer, Nat. Shout out, Nat. She's the real MVP, holding it down back there off camera. But we have Nat's fun fact of the day. And in light of the fun fact, can I get a drum roll, please? So, Nat's fun fact of this episode is she is a drummer and she's been playing the drums since 5th grade.
Wow.
Would have never guessed.
That's impressive. Yeah. I have not seen her play. I think we might have to do that on one of
these
episodes.
Bring that on. Yeah.
I'm with that.
Need a little live performance.
Nat, we know you're back there laughing right now. So we know we can't see you, but we know you're laughing right now. And we're gonna bring you on one of these episodes, and you gotta go ahead and hit a little riff for us, hit a little set for us. All right, we need it.
Oh man, Caleb, when we were talking topic, one thing that was kind of at the top was this idea of the difference between like discipline and motivation, or I guess how they can work together or relate. We've probably danced around this a good bit without directly addressing any one thing. Where were some directions that you were hoping to go that we haven't touched yet with that?
No, I think we've covered a lot of the grounds. I just think looking at it from the perspective of, as you had just mentioned, with that spectrum of motivation on one side all the way to the intrinsic motivation on one side, to me, self-discipline is the truest form of intrinsic motivation. It is almost the highest level of that spectrum that one could go, because even intrinsic motivation, obviously you're finding satisfaction and pleasure in executing that task. You've identified that's part of yourself and all of those things. But I, for me, self-discipline component just goes one step further, because when you have that level of discipline, it's a non-negotiable almost. So there isn't there's nothing to say about it. It's
Right.
non-negotiable that this is what is. And I just feel like it's that on the
Yeah.
truest sense of
Mhm.
intrinsic motivation.
So, not pushing back on it, but kind of, I guess, diving into it a little bit more. Is there a piece of kind of internalization that's necessary for that to be true? Like, could you have self discipline, but it's, I guess, not as authentic? And in that way, like the effort is higher, right? Because I completely agree. Like, if you're fully bought in, this is you and this is what you do, right? And it self discipline becomes effortless. You know, like when we make the references to Kobe getting up and going to the gym in the morning, that is effortless self discipline. That is who he is, what he
Yeah.
does. He enjoys
Yeah.
it, right? When that's less authentic, can the effort be higher and kind of take it down the continuum in your eyes? Or what do you think about that?
I think it can. Yes, I think that there could be overriding there that happens. Maybe not every time, but on some instances where that effort, so to speak, could still be at the highest level, but maybe it's not as far on the intrinsic side, so to speak, of that continuum or of that
Mm-hmm.
spectrum, but that the regardless that
Yeah.
the effort is still there. So I don't know if necessarily the effort determines, or like the amount of effort, so to speak, determines the amount of motivation, so to speak, that one has for a certain skill or a certain performance or what have you. I think people think I like that with Kobe because he
Yeah.
did it effortlessly. People think like he's not even trying to speak with that almost. And a lot of times with self discipline, motivation, we think it's
Mm-hmm.
gritty, hard. You got to try super hard. You have to push, and that's not the
Mm-hmm.
case. And that's a great thing. Like you said, that perspective is sometimes the effort doesn't have to be like it's not always a huge effort to do that. And I think at that point it can kind of change and shift that on the spectrum, so to speak.
Yeah. I even think like tying it back to one of the first points Mike made about like the coach. If your perception of the coach is like, this is a chore and this is something I have to do and like I don't want to do it, like it doesn't really tie into discipline that much, right? Like, I mean, if you go and do it, I guess it can, but it's not that
No,
authentic discipline, right? Like, you're not bought
no.
into this. Whereas if the coach is just keeping you on track with a schedule and this is just like part of the rhythm and the routine, like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
dude, that's discipline, right? Like that contributes to discipline. It's still coming from you, not that coach, but yeah, they have an interesting like scale and not my favorite piece of material ever, but like talking about flow state, there is a scale that exists. Again, not my favorite, but the concept of it is kind of cool. And it's like, see if I can do this right. Wow, look at that. So it's like your perceived skill level from like low to high. And then it's your task demands from low, like down here, to high. And so they argue that like the zone, if you will, is if I can do angles, it'd be down the middle like
Mm-hmm.
this. And so your flow is when your demands like the task demands match your perceived skill level. I would argue that it's actually like this upper right quadrant is really like that's where flow is. Um, but I think the concept is kind of interesting relating it to self discipline, right? Uh,
I like that, Mike. Yeah.
Mike looks glazed over.
I was looking for Mike to chime in. He didn't have nothing.
I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I've been fighting a migraine today like crazy. So
Mhm.
like my ability to focus right now, like I am working so hard to stay dialed in,
Yep.
and like I am I am trying to be locked in right now. Like my body, I don't know what's going on. If it's the weather bothering me, but like I have this is the second time in like 6 weeks or 5 weeks that I've gotten sick. So I don't know what the heck is going on with me. Like I was thinking like I gotta call my doctor this week. I need to get in. I don't know if I need to get blood work done or something. I texted my boss like, hey, look, I might not be in tomorrow. I got this. I mean, I have been tripping. So like I've been staring at this
We
camera
need the
right now,
kid
like,
healthy.
all right, just literally listen, I'm happy to be here. This is where I want to be. All right, I'm gonna bring an attitude. I'm gonna have good things to say. Like I've been telling myself all this stuff the whole time just to stay engaged. So, but your boy's here. Your boy is here.
I like that.
I'll take it a similar direction with flow, but maybe like branching off of that. Another concept that's pretty prevalent in literature, right? So flow just being this idea of, you're in the zone, right? Like everything's clicking, it feels a little bit effortless. There is a piece with like attention in particular, where if your attention isn't in the moment, which we've touched on a little bit, it will undermine your ability to get in flow, right? If you're in the zone, you're not thinking past and you're not thinking future. Those take away from what you're doing, right? The reason I want to bring that up is, again, Caleb, we've talked about this before, but you guys work a lot with this idea of past, future, present, right? And like, what are you doing? Because there are benefits to thinking about the past and reflecting upon that, or the
Absolutely.
future and planning, but it's not when you're doing something.
No, definitely not. And yeah, studies have shown that on average, 80% of our thoughts on a day-to-day basis, are in the future or in the past. And 20% are only in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
But like you mentioned with children, from 0 to 5, those first 60 months of everyone's life, they're in that zone state because they don't necessarily have a concept of future or past, because they're so immersed in what they're doing. Like you said, every little thing they're hyped up on. They're asking questions. They're involved. They're engaged with this task at hand. And so, kind of being able to flip that mindset, so to speak, and being able to live 80% in the present and experiencing what's going on right here, right now. Like you said, it's still important. Obviously, we need to go into the future to plan. We have to have visions. We have to have goals. We have to have things that we're working towards. So it is beneficial to go into the future to map out what we define as success, and then going in the past. Well, we have to learn. We have to evaluate. We have to take pieces of information we can use from performance, we can use from a meeting, we can use from whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes we're just replaying it. We just put a thought from the past on a loop, or something that we haven't given up on yet. We're just replaying that all day long. And our concentration is not right here, right now, locked over the task at hand. And that, like you said, takes you out of that quote unquote zone state.
I think also, like, again, everything sounds really nice when like we say the idea of it, but putting it into practice is completely different. So to follow up with that, be intentional when you're going to go to the past or the present. Like, have guidelines for when you want to do that, like more specifically than just like, okay, I'm not going to do it during a task. And that raises the question for me: when do you recommend focusing on those that are not like locked in right now? When would you go future, go past?
Well, I love doing it on my runs. Like on the morning runs, I'll just think about, it's like what do I want to accomplish by the end of that day? When I lay my head on the pillow,
Mm-hmm.
what do I want to do? What kind of 3 or 5 things, and maybe in work or in a different life arena for myself, that I want to accomplish, that are meaningful, that are impactful, that are going to move the needle that day in the big picture? Maybe they're not. They're not huge. They're not huge on the span of that quarter or that year, but for that day, they're big items, so to speak. So in the morning, just kind of seeing how you want your day to go, visualizing what it is that you're going to accomplish. That. But even at the end of the day, like before you're leaving
Mm-hmm.
work, let's do a quick recap. Let's assess what we did that day. what did we learn from this thing? What kind of information did we gather? Evaluate a performance or something, and then all right, I'm better equipped to take on tomorrow and be better than what I was today. So I think there are definitely times throughout the day where you can plan, but those morning runs are in the morning when the mind is clear and just seeing, all right, we're going to have the best day yet, and let's see what it is that we're going to accomplish, and then go out and hopefully do that.
Yeah, I think that's actually fascinating because when you were talking about, I reflect like I'm not a morning person. I like to stumble out of bed like our buddy D Bucky would sometimes when the clock hits double digits or later.
You love
It's nice when you can do it. But so for me, if somebody says morning workout, my head is more worried about the time management than the run itself, right? Which is like where does my attention go? It's like, dude, if I'm doing the math on a morning run, if I'm running a measly, 4 miles for myself and I got to do it at 5 a.m. so that I can get done with it by, let's say 5:35, 5:45, however fast or slow I'm going that day, so that I can shower and be done with the shower by 6 so that I can, go get breakfast and, hang out and get that routine out of the way so that I can get to work at 6:30. Versus for you, that's just part of, I would imagine, your self-discipline, right? Like that's automatic, and your focus is more on the run.
That's like, is that the thought that goes for wake up, the alarm's going off, or lace up the shoes and you're out the door? I don't care what's going on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
I love that. That's a real runner right there. Like not many people understand that, and I gotta say, like the discipline. No matter what's going on, that alarm goes off. You roll out of bed and you lace them up, and whether it's literally running or it is working out, relationships,
Anything.
like there is a figurative alarm that goes off, and you have to be willing to hit the stop button on the alarm, roll out of bed, and lace them up. If it's a relationship, there's going to be an alarm that goes off. Hit the stop button, turn the alarm off, roll out of bed, and lace them up. Like that can be applied to so many things. So many things.
Yep. And to that point, like the idea of the alarm, there's a joke. So another guy that we all know, he was the fourth for us when we ran at Indy, Mr. Russo.
Shout out Russo.
We quote a lot out of a couple of shows, and one of the quotes that we jokingly use is 3, 2, 1, do it. And it's like, okay, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. Right. So like we used it the other week, not in a serious way, but we were like, all right, Anthony, let's make a trade. And he was like, oh yeah, for sure. And we said something like, oh, I think you want this guy. He clearly doesn't want that guy. And we were like, all right, 3, 2, 1, we do it for a second. Okay, 3, 2, 1, do it. And we're like, all right, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. And it's a joke, right? But there are times when like that needs to be the idea, right? If you're stuck thinking about like the pros and cons and put yourself into a like paralysis by analysis type of thing, that's not super beneficial to actually getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And I think two conflicting ideas with that, not complete opposites or anything, but social media again does not help that action. Like how long can you sit on your phone? How long am I scrolling through reels before I actually go do whatever it is that I need to do? I can't say TikTok because they're not allowed to use that at our company, so I'm a reels guy now. But no, and the opposite being like this more mindful thing. For the record, I'm not actually on either of those that often. I send more of what gets sent to me than actually send my own stuff. I'm lazy. But being like more mindful, like, and with that mindfulness, can you let things go? Like, yeah, cool. It's good if you don't reminisce on, the past, the future, these like thoughts that are not productive, even in the present moment. But can you let it go? Because that's a skill. Meditation's crazy. Like, sounds boring. Go sit and do nothing for 15, 20 minutes. But is it a won't or a can't? Like how good are we as a society at actually dropping a thought, letting it go, and not coming back to it?
Extremely hard. That's so hard. That is very hard. And that's one thing. Kind of, I'll go in a similar
And
vein
I would
there with my morning runs. Like all the time, like sometimes I do my phone, but I'm getting better now. Where leaving it home, and I have no. Like I started off running with music, and now it's just no music. It's me and my thoughts. I got to sit out there with myself for 60 minutes. So we better get comfy. We better pull up a chair and get to know my inner voice, because it's just gonna be me and me out there. We're gonna sift through it, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that comes with it, and just see where we're at. So I think, yeah, the meditation piece is beneficial for everyone, but it's silence. We are not a society that is comfortable with silence. We need some type of noise. We need some type of external stimuli to keep us going, which I don't think is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting with a couple of concepts that are kind of wrapping back around here. So you just mentioned the silence. In general, we don't love silence. But do we view that as a threat, or do we use that to our advantage? Because even like presentations, dude, silence is so powerful in a presentation because it can help you get like the engagement and the answers and the things like that, or even just make a point
Absolutely.
that you want to make or get that interaction that you need by leveraging it, right? And so when we go back to even the idea of your work is boring, I don't want to go to work, right? You have the power to think of it like that, or think of silence as bad, or to again flip your mindset on work. And so being able to drop and be mindful or meditative, and let those things go rather than sit on them is powerful. That's how you flip mindset, because it's easy to have a good mindset when things are good, but when it's not something you enjoy, you need to build those habits for that.
Yeah. Any thoughts? Any questions? I had something and I'm losing it.
That's okay. I was going to ask you how some of this built on the question that you posed with kind of your personal experience with like just work in general.
For me, I have over the past maybe couple weeks here, I've really had to ask myself, what is keeping me where I'm at? What do I appreciate about it? And what can I learn from it? Those are the questions I ask myself and I answer. But then I also take it the other way and I allow myself to acknowledge some of the negatives or some of the things that I dislike, because it's my reality. I go, you know what? I don't like X, Y, and Z, but am I able to change those things? If I can't change those things, are they something that I'm okay dealing with until the entire environment or the situation changes?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think like right now, my next step is going to be to come up with a plan. And Caleb, you hit on it. Whether it's a everyday thing or it's a once a week thing, what am I accomplishing this week or over these next couple days that are going to fulfill me and help me get through this day, through this week, into that next stepping stone? And so I kind of been sitting here a little bit thinking like, all right, so what can I do this week? So one, pour into other people. Like pouring into other people fills me up. So what can I do this week to pour into other people to make their week or their day better? And then from there, what can I do for myself to make it so that I feel like I'm accomplishing something and that I'm continuing to grow? Those are like the two big things that I'm gonna focus on this week and knock out and see where that takes me. Like I said, you can do it for a day, a week, a month. Like I'm gonna start. Let's just start with a week. Let's see how that goes. If a week goes good, all right. Well, let's try for 2 more weeks and just see where this snowball starts to grow and roll to.
I like that.
Yeah, I think so. We're on the same page again, Mike. Next points were similar to yours. Corny but powerful if you actually think about it. Saying that kind of floats around these days is this idea of 1% better. Like every day, it doesn't really matter what it is, just 1% better, right? I think it's really easy to get buy-in on a physical level. And so examples being, if you're at the gym, like, yeah, it makes sense that you should add weight as you go. Like every week, maybe you're adding, 5 pounds to whatever that is that you're doing. With running, one of the plans that like I default to, and I've given Mr. Caleb, is look, we're going to run the same workout, but each week we're going to drop the time on the mile reps. Like it's the same thing, but we're just going to make it a little bit faster.
Right.
What happens with those is over time, like you talked about with the slideshows, those 30, 60 day, compilations of your transformations, you see the progress at the end of it, right? Like for Caleb, it might just be 5 seconds a week that we're dropping off a mile time, but man, we might have started at 6:40 and now we're at 5:30. That's a huge jump, like that's no joke. But the focus was on the small change and being locked in for that every time that the stage is set for it. Mentally, how do you replicate that? For me, my head goes to gratitude. We talked about thoughts and self-talk and just how negative we are to ourselves, tracking those thoughts. I think gratitude has a similar bad rep with the 1% better. I think they're one and the same when we talk about it. Is like, yeah, rainbows, butterflies, like optimism, like blah, 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 blah. If you're not tracking your mindset and actually like putting in effort to make it better, man, what are you doing? One thing that we talk about as performance experts a lot at work is, we teach a skill of gratitude. Is basically just journaling 3 good things, but not only the good thing, like what about that thing? Give me a little reflection on why or what is good about it. I've used that a lot in my personal life, and even like with other people. Like I could call Mike up every single day and say, give me 3 good things that happened to you and what was important about those things to you, or why were those good? And just having like some metric like that in the similar way that you would do that physical transformation, how can you do that mentally? And I'll pose that to you guys too, if there's other routes that you guys have used for that or heard of.
That's good. I can't say I've heard of one in particular. No, I just want to acknowledge that that's really good, and I want to pose that to the listeners and viewers. Like, what are some of the things that you're doing in similar fashion to what Nick has just brought up? What are 3 good things that you can recognize today, or this week that you experience? And if you feel inclined, like write them down and share them with one person in your circle, and see if that changes anything for you. See if that makes you feel any better, or if you want to continue doing that, for sure, keep that up. But I think that was just a huge point to bring up.
I agree. I think one thing is, because every day there's going to be instances in all of these areas of life where our expectations do not meet reality. And when that happens, what does your internal dialogue go to, or what are your thoughts like? You're going to have immediate responses. You're going to have immediate reactions, but you need to be able to kind of step back from the situation, take yourself out of it a little bit, and just assess it and think, all right, well, what am I thinking right now? Is this positive? Is this serving me? Am I going to learn from this? Am I just reacting out of spite, reacting because I'm angry, or from whatever?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one thing, is like when your expectations don't meet reality today, like how are you responding? And are you finding yourself? Are you improving? Are you being less combative? Are you being less immediate response? You're able to slowly gather the thoughts, lower the breath, control, assess. I think that's one way from a mental standpoint. It's like, well, when that expectation isn't met, all right, well, let's not have immediate knee-jerk reactions every time, or get ourselves worked up, or what have you.
Yeah, I think that is huge. And I would even build on it. Like the awareness is always step 1 of anything, right? Like you can't change without knowing that it's there. And then tying it back to the acceptance piece, like you need to be able to accept where you're at once you're aware of it. Because one thing that a lot of people do is, even with like the 3 good things, like some people just be like, nah, today was shit. There was nothing good about it. I promise you could come up with 3 good things. Like if nothing else, like waking up's a pretty good thing. Any food at all. Like one meal is still pretty good.
You're able to walk.
One social interaction is still pretty good. But if you want to sit there and say like, nah, that's so below the bar and like make it a comparison thing again, cool, go for it. That's your mindset. And so what people often do is when they have that awareness, especially with like fitness, dude, as soon as they're aware of where they're at, they beat themselves up for it. What are we doing? Like, you can't change that. That's behind us, right? And so moving forward and like having that plan. And another thing that I think is underrated with the awareness is, Mike, when you said, I'm going to tie it back to like a high functioning zombie at work, like you've got these bad habits over time. Physically, I think this is a really easy thing to demonstrate. Like if I walk around like a zombie every single day for 25 years of life, I promise you my posture is not going to be good. I promise you that I've built up habits. I have built up like muscle, just I guess posture, and just certain like my range of motion is not going to be good. My movement patterns in general are going to be very specific from walking around like a zombie, right? Mentally, the same thing happens, right? The phrase that neurons that fire together wire together. When your instinct, like Mr. Caleb said, is to be negative and reactive in these scenarios, instantly beat yourself up. If you've been doing that for 20 years, do you really expect it to change in a day?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's why the plan's so important. I also think like writing stuff down is super powerful. Again, it's cheesy, it's corny, and I mean, you get the eye roll when you say it. How many times a day do you think about something that you need to do or remember? And you're like, all right, cool, I'll just remember it, right? Instead of putting it in a note or jotting it down somewhere. And then 3 hours later, you're like, dang, I forgot about that, huh? Just rinse and repeat, right? Like, write it down. Write down something that's going to hold you accountable for positive change.
Yeah, because we do need validation to keep this self-discipline or the intrinsic motivation going. We have to have validation at some point. That knowing that these increment units of work or what have you are eventually paying off and we are growing as individuals. That validation piece is definitely important.
Yeah, and not validation in like a negative sense either, like in a just pure form, like validation, or even if you want to phrase it, feedback. Like I think that still works, checks like the box, right? And feedback doesn't have to be negative; it can be positive feedback. But if there's no validation, there's no feedback, there's no system to let you know where you're at and drive that awareness.
Just going to keep spinning.
It'll be a happy coincidence. Yeah, you just run around in a field. You know? Mr. Mike, I'm going to pose the question for you.
Yeah.
Since, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but just like adding some specificity here because I think it is important. Since one thing that we're working on is you show up to work with that positive energy, but your feelings towards work have just been very reflective as of late. I think is probably a fair way to put it. Specifically, what is a goal for you this next week? You said you're going to be positive. You're going to try to like think of things like, how are you going to track that? What are you specifically going to do? Kind of wrap her up there, and then we'll touch on how it went in the future.
So for me this week, I think my one goal is just going to be, I guess my starting goal. I want to say one goal. So my starting goal is to uplift our team, because we've been running into some I don't even want to call it motivational issues, but everybody seems to be in a slump right now. So for those who don't know, like I work in sales, health and safety, medical sales, and our team, we have I think eight people on our team total, 9 if you include my sales manager. And everybody has just seemingly been in a slump where sales aren't coming in as fast. We're like missing our mark on a couple things. And so to help encourage people to stay the course, to keep fighting, to have discipline, my goal this week is to encourage. And as a matter of fact, my sales manager asked, like, he was like, "Hey, like, I appreciate the videos that you share with me from time to time, just about encouragement, words to just keep going, keep fighting. For this week, that's what I intentionally want to do. I want to go find some videos that resonate with people, and maybe send them out individually. Like, hey, this video made me think of you. Watch it, and just to give them some motivation, just to let them know, like, this is a team atmosphere here. We're going to support each other. We're going to keep pushing. And I think that, to me, knowing that people are like, dang, I appreciate you thinking of me. This helped me. That, to me, feels good. So that'll be my starting goal.
That's
like
awesome.
that. So Caleb, I'm gonna throw this to you in a second, but for me, I'll give you a chance to brainstorm. Similarly, I'm going to try to put a goal into place because, again, talking about things is great. Applying them's better. And so why not practice what we've been talking about? My goal is to intentionally just embrace challenges this week. I'm going to try to do one a day where maybe in the moment, either myself or someone else, maybe not the most optimistic mindset of something that we got going on. Right. And I want to use just a simple sentence starter like, I am thankful for the opportunity to do this. And then I want to try to find one positive of something that maybe initially didn't seem positive. And so I'm just going to fill it up on my whiteboard at work and try to fill it in once a day.
Yeah.
I like it, for sure.
I think one of my goals this week is to be more single-minded, so to speak. So I know at the beginning I talked about the blindness. And I think one of my biggest challenges just going through the work there on a day-to-day basis is like when there's a task at hand, completely locking in on that task, finishing it, and then moving on to the next without without picking up my phone and going on whatever, without going talking to somebody else work, hey, you about this, but being single minded where, all right, this is the task that is currently at hand. If this takes me 15 minutes, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to think about nothing but what this is right here, right? Because attention span for me,
Yeah,
I mean,
I like
is
that a lot.
definitely the biggest challenge that I have every day is that concentration. I mean, I'm fairly good at it, but I think that's still one thing that we can all improve on is that single mindedness. We like to think that we're expert multitaskers, but in reality, we're just bullshitting ourselves. We can't, we're not good multitaskers. We know that, but we're just saying that to make us feel ourselves better. Not doing no, it doesn't work.
No, I completely agree. There's actually studies to say that we cannot multitask. It's just really quick shifting back and forth between things, which
I would agree
I
that
would actually,
I would
that fits
exactly.
my
I would say that
definition.
is. I don't think you can have your energy in off in two different tasks. No, it's you have to energy in one place.
You can be better at juggling them. So I do think it exists. However, we are not very good at it. There's a lot of studies to say that.
Yeah.
And with those goals, we'll kind of wrap up here. But my closing thoughts are just keep in mind that it's the day one, right? So I'll encourage anybody watching to also set a goal. If you want to, tail any of ours, go for it. Why not? But challenge yourself to have a day one goal, accept where you're at, and just move forward a little bit with that. For instance, like the 15 minutes for Caleb, it may start at 15 minutes here. We might talk to him in a month from now and it's up to 30 minutes or an hour or something like that. I think that's often how like the meditation works is you start meditating for 5 minutes and the next thing you know, you're doing it for an hour. It takes practice. You got to be comfortable being at day one.
Yeah.
You can't just sit there for an hour. But any closing remarks from you guys?
My closing remark, I guess, would just be one thing I think that ties in with discipline that's a good component is a standard. And the standard is going to be unique. I have a standard that's unique to me. Mike, you got a standard that's unique to you. Nick, you got a standard that's unique to you. Everyone listening, you have your own standard. And the awesome thing is you get to define what that standard is. So I think the concept around if you don't have it, just think about what a standard is. And this is just kind of your requirement for a satisfactory performance on any day-to-day basis in anything that you're doing. And your standard does not have to be someone else's standard. It's unique to you and only you. And by hitting that standard, you're going to just see some of that, like they talk about that validation component and that self-discipline that you can begin to cultivate, and the ball gets rolling a little bit. When you do kind of have that standard that is, today, this is my minimum requirement, and I'm going to get this. And then we just build off of that.
Yeah, and to build on both of those and hopefully kind of bring this to a close here. Realize that it's you versus you. At the end of the day, it is truly you versus you. You can have if I'm competing against you owe you. That's all it is, man. Like you owe you. And if you again, extrinsic motivation is great. Intrinsic motivation is great, at least to start. But if I'm competing against Nick and Caleb, and God forbid it happens, both of them die tomorrow, I've lost my desire to continue to compete. Like what am I doing? It's like, all right, well, there's that. I got to find something else to do. Like again, just get started. Whether that's extrinsic or intrinsic, but down the road, find what motivates you. You owe you, and you owe you rewards too. You don't owe yourself criticism all the time. Yeah, you don't owe yourself heartache. Like be kind to yourself. And I know some people are like, well, I talk to myself that way. All right, that's what gets you going. Then do that sometimes. But remember to balance some of that tough talk with some motivation and some compliments. Like, dang man, you've come a long way. You really did it. I know it was hard back then, but you're here now. So you owe you is you versus you. Just start.
I love it.
So Caleb, we appreciate you joining
I appreciate
the episode,
you,
man. This was I think this might have been yeah. This was a good one. So like we said at the beginning, y'all, please share the message if it hits with y'all, share it with somebody. Even if it's a clip, send it to them. Say, hey, this made me think of you. Like, subscribe, and be on the lookout for more content. Nat, as always, we appreciate you holding it down backstage. And this is Men to Mind, episode 6. We signing off.
Thank you,
appreciate it, y'all.